Folks are here in Sweetwater County to attend this and speak a little bit about what the association, how the association feels about specifically the enforcement of some of these. There's smarter people than me that can speak to the other issues, so I'll just deal almost exclusively with just the enforcement aspect of the statutes and specifically marijuana. Right now, as the statutes read, marijuana is very limited in how we are measuring it and what form it comes in. The biggest issue that we're facing right now is the edible aspect of marijuana. Being in Sweetwater County, being on I-80, we have a tremendous amount of traffic coming through with large amounts of marijuana, specifically in the edible form. It inundates us with stops and large amounts of law enforcement time in doing these interdictions. And we're pulling over vehicles that have massive amounts of gummy bears, brownies, anything along those lines. And the problem that we've had is how do we deal with this? Up until recently, it was just an issue of take it and let it go. Now we have misdemeanor. Now we can at least test and get to the point of saying, okay, we know it's marijuana, so we're going to test it as that. We're going to treat it as a misdemeanor. This is regardless of the weight. And so one of the things we have to understand is that there is a big difference right now between the edibles that we're seeing coming through and maybe the edibles that were done back in 1980 when we were using ditchweed to cook some brownies. These are highly laced THC edibles. We're talking about gummy bears that are considered, by Colorado terms, 1/3 of a gummy bear is a dose, is considered a serving, if you will. These are brownies, a 100 milligram brownie that has to be divided up into 10 to be considered. One is 10 doses in that 100 milligram brownie. And the way they're making these things is that it's a spray of THC. They'll have the gummy bears down, they'll spray them, and they package them. They look like gummy bears. For whatever reason, they're highly laced with THC. It's easier to sell 6 gummy bears and make it a 60-milligram bag, and then there's one dose, only one gummy bear, only eat one gummy bear. Nobody's ever eaten one gummy bear in their entire life. One gummy bear is one dose. So when we get these coming through, we have no way of measuring, we have no way of seeing whether or not this is a felony amount, because we have a large weight of it. So the issue is that what has been proposed in the past is a convoluted, in my opinion, a convoluted way of dealing with edibles. We're treating it as something lesser than the green leafy plant. We're treating it as something lesser than what we have seen in marijuana. And it's not. If anything, it's the exact opposite. And to refer to Senate File 96, when we look at what has been proposed as the punishment or the penalty phase of possession, is that we treat it less than even a misdemeanor by providing first offense 8 days in the county jail, fine not more than $300. I think this is not a reasonable approach to what we're facing right now with edibles. As long as marijuana is a Schedule 1, as long as marijuana is illegal, edibles need to be treated in the same penalty phase as a green leafy subject, as a green leafy plant that we typically find marijuana's form. And it makes it easier for law enforcement to act on it. It makes it easier for the courts to deal with it. It makes it easier for us in form of keeping records, in form of enhanced penalties, things along those lines. One aspect outside of the penalty phase, which really doesn't address a full misdemeanor provision in regards to, say, if you had less than 3 ounces of marijuana, it's treated much differently. Outside of that, the issue of how do we determine THC levels, or how do we determine what we're looking at as far as the quantity of THC in the actual edible form. Right now, we don't have the capability within the state of Wyoming to determine how much THC is in a THC is in a certain aspect. We can test for THC. We can test for the marijuana derivative and find out if that actual edible has it. But anything further than that is extremely difficult within the state of Wyoming. Right now, the chemical testing lab is backed up. The vast majority of items that they're able to push out are blood draws from DUIs. And any aspect going further than that, we would have to use a private lab if we wanted to test anything further beyond what they kick back as being their initial screening. So the initial presumptive test can be done, showing that this item actually has THC in it. And then from there, we have the level of, we have to determine what weight we're going to provide it to go from a misdemeanor up to a felony. I would recommend that the 3 ounces that has been done in the past be maintained. It's a simple formula. I think once we want to get into the area of 3 ounces isn't as good here because we don't know what the THC level is. I think we're running a slippery slope on what kind of marijuana we have. I mean, that could be applied to actually even the green leafy subject. I mean, there's different varieties in that as well. And so once we take that turn on determining how much THC levels are in something to determine whether or not it's a felony or misdemeanor, I think that we come into a convoluted issue. So those are the general thoughts really on the County Attorneys Association on how we look at the edible aspect of the law. And we would ask that if we are going to approach this portion of the marijuana law, and we're going to deal with edibles, that we deal with it in a rational, reasonable way that correlates with what we already have on the books. And I thank you for your time, and I'd be more than willing to answer any questions.
Questions there? Yes, Representative Croker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, right now, if you catch somebody with these edibles, that you can still charge them with a misdemeanor. Is that correct? It's just the issue of the dividing line between the misdemeanor and the felony that's in doubt.
That is correct. That's the only thing we really can. So if you have a van full of gummy bears, you got a misdemeanor. I know we're playing our hand to those people out there who now have a van full of gummy bears, but it's the portion is that we do not have that felony.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Well, along those lines, if somebody has an intent to deal under current law,